For an expert assessment, let's talk against the former Chief of the General Staff, Richard Dannatt. General Dannatt sits in the House of Lords as a crossbencher. Morning to you, Richard.
Join you again.
Great pleasure, as ever. Are we seeing the big push, as it were, for Bakhmut?
We're certainly seeing continued fighting now, rather more in Ukraine's favor around Bakhmut. But if you mean, are we seeing the big push period? No, the major counteroffensive, which we're all expecting and the Ukrainians are preparing for, has not begun yet, but probably is not that far away.
Forgive the very naive question here. Is it strange for there to be an offensive talked about for so long? It must give some advantage to the opposition, to the people who are going to defend against the offensive, when it's been so widely trailed and long expected.
Well, in any conflict, both sides are trying to prevail. In this case, the Russians, certainly for the time being, have exhausted themselves. So it's almost inevitable that the other side, the Ukrainians in this case, are going to mount a counteroffensive of themselves. We've been talking about that for some time, and I think that's entirely predictable and entirely likely. That said, of course, what we don't know and what we shouldn't speculate about is exactly what form that operation will take, that counteroffensive will take, what their axes of advance, their lines of attack will be, and what their methods will be. But what we do know is over a period of time, various countries in the West have been providing training, advice, and critically equipment and ammunition to the Ukrainians so that their capability to mount this offensive is growing all the time. And I think also we recognize that if Ukraine is going to succeed in its stated objective of freeing its territory from Russian occupation, this is the year that they've got to do it. There is a danger that Western support will wane. Yeah. There is also the danger that Putin will see that time is on his side. So it's really important that the Ukrainians do mount this offensive effectively at the right time, in the right way, in the right place. And I think they're to be commended for not rushing it. It's much better that they get their new troops properly organized, get their planning settled, their rehearsals conducted, so that when they do strike, they strike decisively. And I think we've discussed this before, after a long, hard winter fought by the Russians and taking huge casualties in a cause that many of the Russian soldiers don't really believe in, that if there are decisive blows struck against the Russians, there is a chance that Russian military morale will crack and the backbone of the Russian army might crumble in the way that we saw it around Kharkiv last September. Now, you could say that's wishful thinking, but I believe it's potentially possible. Yeah. The alternative is that this war is going to drag on. And as I suggested a moment or two ago, dragging on is ultimately in Putin's favor, as probably Western support will wane and he will move to take the advantage.
Really interesting analysis, as ever. Thank you so much for joining us. That's General Dannatt there. Richard Dannatt, the former Chief of the General Staff.